Hi, everyone. Thanks for tuning in. Today, we're going to talk about ways for organizations to assess their current ERP system, their current enterprise system. It's a concept that is well understood. You think about the system and how it supports your business needs, your processes, policies, and all that. But there aren't too many methodologies that are out there that very specifically and tangibly allow you to go through that process. So we'll be talking about that as well as showing our tool that enables you to do it. Okay. So first, just a few seconds on our company as well as the software. As mentioned in other videos, the company is called Perfect SME because we seek perfection in order to achieve excellence. Right? We're using very, very big corporate methodologies, but in a practical, let's say, right-sized format that allows for smaller companies to take advantage of those really good concepts. Okay? And we really want to make sure that technology is positively thought of in smaller to mid-sized organizations. Okay? Now on to the product, ImplementSME.io. A lot of people call it ImplementsMe.io. It really helps you to manage all phases of your ERP lifecycle. Okay? Of course, assessing your current system and potential deficiencies is part of that lifecycle. Okay? So the current system assessment sometimes gets lumped into the requirements gathering portion, but I personally believe it's a step before that. Because before you start to think about what you need or want in a future system, you probably need to first understand whether your current system is able to furnish those needs. Okay. And there's a slight difference between assessing the current system to see if it could meet your needs that it's currently not meeting versus gathering requirements knowing that you're going to be implementing a new system. The difference is when you know you're going to implement a new system, you're probably going to start throwing out all of these future state stuff like 2 years from now, 4 years from now, I'm going to need these additional requirements or these additional features. So you throw those in, kind of the kitchen sink concept. But when you're focusing on leveraging and utilizing your current system with the hope that you may not have to do, to acquire or subscribe to a new solution, then it's a little bit more specific. It's more tangible and you're a little bit more realistic. Okay. Now, let's think about why we built out this tool and we have the embedded methodologies. Right? And I frequently use this example. I'm going to do so again. Just like waterfall was not the appropriate project management method, nor did it provide any tools for software development going on 20, 25, 30 years ago, a group came together and put together the Agile Manifesto. This is 2001. And since then, in addition to the methodologies, tools have been built out. All of this really enabled and improved the whole software development process. Okay? Until our tool and our embedded methodologies, however, that need still existed for ERP. With our tool, with our methodologies that are embedded, we believe we solve the ERP specific needs around project management and in ways that Agile doesn't meet. So we see a number of companies trying to use Agile not for software development, which is the intended case, but for software implementation. So we say, don't do that. If you're not going to use our tool, use something else, but just Agile is not the right method for that, as much as Agile is a terrific methodology overall. Secondly, for small to mid-sized enterprises, we know that you're not consultants. We know that you don't, live ERP day in, day out. So having something to work with, a tool set, a toolkit is really helpful to you. Okay. And the tools that are commonly used today, like file sharing mechanisms, spreadsheets, and document files, for example, like Microsoft Word, better than nothing for sure. But it's far from what our tool provides because the data is static. A Word document or a spreadsheet doesn't tell you, for example, that you may have missed a process or may have missed a sub process within a process. So there's a lot of reasons why those current popular tools just aren't enough. Okay. And the other one is context. Again, words across rows of a spreadsheet don't provide the context that you really want. Let's go over the ERP life cycle real quick. It's a continuous circle. It's kind of like that whole chicken and egg thing. What's first, what's last, it depends on where you are in the corporate life cycle. But as it is, or as it goes for current system assessments, there kind of is a starting point. And that is, you've done your implementation on the current system probably years ago. You've done some enhancements. You may have subscribed to third-party add-ons and modules and built some integrations. And now you're like, I think I've taken the system in the current environment to the absolute maximum. I don't think it's going to be enough anymore, but I want to know for sure. So before you gather those requirements that include big and lofty goals, you would start by assessing the system against more practical needs. Okay. Now, this is what the spreadsheet models look like as it relates to requirements gathering, current system assessments. They all pretty much look like this. They're just a bunch of words on a bunch of rows, and then you're hoping you caught everything. Okay. And a lot of consultants try to leverage that same list for the next phase as you're doing software selections and demos with potential vendors. That part is great. That philosophy is good. But this is just not going to be enough. And in the demo, I'll show you why. Okay. So in addition to the spreadsheet, okay, in the current enterprise systems ERP environment, after that, you've collected, all of you think you've caught all of the requirements and all of the gaps and deficiencies. Then either you or the consulting firm you hired does a presentation to the executive team, and somewhere way down the road that becomes used to create an RFI or RFQ to go out to the various ERP suppliers. Again, the philosophy is fine, but there are so many flaws in this model that truly is outmoded. Okay? And here's the test to apply. First of all, the data that you put into these documents, these static files, do they go anywhere? The second one, which is even a bigger test question, how do you know you captured every key process and every key sub-process within the process? Okay. Third one is, how is this going to be used to really accelerate the next phase of your ERP lifecycle, whether that is requirements gathering, whether that's system selection, whether that's the actual implementation. Okay, we believe on all three counts, the old, outdated, outmoded model fails. But really the biggest, most dangerous one, in my personal opinion, is number two. You do not know if you captured all the needs by process and by sub-process within the process. The reason is it doesn't provide that kind of framework. Okay? So our tool, Implement SME at ImplementERP.ai, okay, we use enterprise architecture model, which means it's not words on a sheet. Okay? Captures processes. So you'll see the tool in a second. But then it also scopes and sizes just how big your gap is, your overarching gap, not a specific gap in one specific process. You can easily size that. You can size that on spreadsheet or on the tool. But I'm talking about the total combined aggregate deficiency. After you've assessed all your processes, all your sub-processes, is the current system far from meeting the needs? Is it moderately far from meeting the needs, or could it meet some needs with maybe some small investments? Okay. This is an objective quantitative tool that helps you to know that. The other one is are my processes going to be improved? Are they going to be ready by moving forward on these various steps? That's another very big one, okay? And also with that view allows executives or people who are not involved in the day-to-day on ERP to know how things are going, to know where. And the other one is to know that when you've done the work of analyzing your current system gaps and deficiencies, knowing that that same information is going to be used to move on to the requirements for the next system to be used to rate and score ERP vendors. And then that's going to be used to literally cut off the first 30 to 60 days of a traditional implementation because you've done so much of the legwork in the earlier phases. Okay. So this is kind of the forever data that can be used by a tool. And forever, we don't mean literally, of course, we mean that some renditions with small updates and iterations would probably allow you to go about 7 years, okay, without starting from scratch, which is a big deal. Okay. The next one is once you have all of that information by process, and again, within each of these little boxes, there's a ton of additional information. But the cool thing is that it maps to a future design and the future configuration, whether it's the future system design for your current system or the system design and configuration because you just had to go with a new system, something that's maybe bigger, handles more transaction volumes, what have you. Okay, but again, didn't have to start from scratch because you collected all of that here, and it just maps over for almost instant leverage and usage next set of tools. All right, so we talked about scoring and sizing and even scoping your deficiencies and such. So this is what I mean. You may have a total of, you know, 5 processes, 5 major processes that is, and maybe you have within the 5 major processes, 5 sub-processes each, which means you have 25 sub-processes, okay? And then you have a number of screens, your today's system, your tomorrow system. You have a number of screens that are utilized to support those processes and sub-processes, right? So what this tool does, first of all, is it allows you to just say how many screens in this particular view, we call it forms, because some systems use that word, some systems use the word page, pane. Okay, but bottom line is it tells you how many you have and tells you how many are either complete or good to go as is and how many are deficient. Okay, that's a big deal because if I know that I have of a total of 27 current screens, okay, and 24 don't make the cut, it's probably a telling sign that the current system ain't gonna work, right? So that's what I mean by sizing and scoping. So you don't go back and forth, it's quite quantitative in nature. All right, on to the demo portion. When you have at least one project created and you log in, you'll land on the My Projects landing page. Now, the project that I've set up for this demo is here as a food and beverage company that's doing an assessment of their current enterprise system. But I want to show you really quickly how you can create a project from scratch just because it's so quick and easy. So let's call it ABC Co. System Assessment. Okay. Has a start date of, let's say, this upcoming Monday. And why don't we give it about a 3-month timeline. Okay. I'll select myself as a project manager, and do note, in order for a name to show up in the drop-down menu, you have to have that person set up in user management. Okay, I click create. You can see it's building out the database for the project. Okay, now this part is incredibly important. We're going to add processes. You can create your own pretty darn quick, but it's even quicker to go into the process library so you can upload some from there. I'm going to pick design to refine because I have an engineering step. I'm going to pick order to cash. I'm going to pick procure to pay and record the report. Now, as mentioned before, if you don't use this nomenclature, these terms and phrases, I highly recommend you learn about them and start, because large corporations have started the enterprise architecture model for designing anything and everything having to do with their business. We do the same, but we just downsize it for or I should say, right size it for small to mid-sized enterprises, but they are incredibly useful. It really standardizes everything. Okay. So as you can see, I've created the processes. Okay. Now, you can change names if you want to. You can delete a process, or you can add processes, new sub-process. Okay, I'm going to add that. You can also move the order, but since there is no new sub-process for me, I'm going to delete it. Okay, so what you're doing in assessing your current system really is you're assessing the efficiency and the effectiveness of your process. And if the system is allowing you to be as efficient and as effective as you want to be, need to be, so you'll see in a second that we'll be seeing if let's use the order of cash because that's a more common one, the creating an order sub-process in the order to cash lifecycle. Is this properly supported by the systems, the screens in your system? How about scheduling that order, producing the order, shipping and fulfilling that order, and invoicing? And there are some other sub-processes that some companies want to add, such as payment posting, journal entry, what have you. Okay. And we'll get into that in a little bit of depth when we go into the already established project. Okay. You can start to add forms here. It's not the only place. I'm going to show you one that's more commonly used, but for now we're going to click done. So it takes us to a dashboard. Okay. Notice that a dashboard now contains the processes that we've selected so far. Okay. So in this, you're going to see what all of these percentages mean, the tasks, the open versus late. All of that is going to be covered in greater depth when we go into the form tracker page. But I just wanted you to see that this dashboard has now been created, and a very key point for people who aren't involved in ERP activities day in, day out. They want to come to a place like this. They want to see how you're doing on these major processes. They want to see if the status is green, which means you're moving at a pace that's commensurate with the due date. This is where a lot of executives like the CEO, the COO, or the CFO come in, because those individuals may not be involved day to day, but they may be part of the steering committee. They may do a monthly review, what have you. Okay. So on to the one that's been more built out. This is a food and beverage company, and they're assessing their current ERP system. Okay. So first of all, you'll see that in addition to the processes that they've selected in the library, they've also created one that's unique to them and their industry. Okay. So you can have lots and lots of processes. Most companies will have between 7 and 15, but you can have 50 if you want. It just adds to the work, so we don't recommend it, but you can have as many as you want. Okay. Let's go in there real quick as a continuation of the prior overview, as well as the project we just created but didn't really build out. Okay. When you build out the process, what you're really doing is you're mapping the screens in your current system that support the sub-process. So these three screens support the sub-process of creating, okay, an order. These three screens are necessary to schedule an order. These two screens are necessary to produce an order, so, and on and on. If there is a process gap in, let's say, the produce subprocess, which means that the order to cash overarching mega process cannot be deemed as ideal because one of its key parts is not working as it should. We'd want to go in and jump in and see where and why the produce subprocess isn't being properly supported. So this is where you go in now and you say, okay, we're sitting down maybe with a consultant and we're going to find out why the work order screen is not supporting our subprocess the way we want it to. And note that this mapping is shown up here too. So you see that this form is used, the screen is used to support the order to cash process, and more specifically, the produce subprocess. Okay, you can type in some notes, type in free form text notes. Okay. And then this is where you start to say, hey, one of the issue is I need integration and integration to CRM. Okay. It's not started. And I'm going to say, okay, I'm going to give it a due date of the end of the month. Okay. Also, maybe the workflow isn't set up or a role isn't set up. So let's see here. I'm going to select, okay, workflow not working, which means that a request from one person is not going to the right place, meaning the inbox or the screen of the next person. Okay, so I'll put this as workflow. Actually, let's add a little more detail for approval. Gonna give it a due date. Okay, all right. Now, maybe there's something else wrong with the screen. And I'm going to add something called, let's see, missing a customer note field. Okay. And let's say that's the only thing that I need. I'm going to deem my review of that screen complete. Now look what happens. Down below, that needed requirement, that change, gets noted here. Now why is that? That's because if I decide that I want to make the improvement and keep my system, okay, then I can start building against that necessary change. So I can do a quick wireframe or a mock-up of showing where that field would belong if I wanted to make that screen more effective. Okay. And once that design is done, then somebody's got to build it out. So it's either a consultant or it's somebody in my company, and they're going to build it out. Okay. And then someone's got to test it. And then since there's going to be ultimately the screen going live in the live production environment, that means that there's got to be a cutover preparation step. Now notice, each of those have a due date, and I select the due date. So I'm going to make this, I'm going to give it a couple months. I'm going to give this a due date. It has to be a little bit later than that, right? And then let's see, to test it, I'll make it even a little bit later than that. And then the cutover will be, say, that August time frame. Make this the same date. Okay. So in other words, not only did I identify what I want to change in here, I want the integration, I want workflow set up, and I better change the date here too, by the way, give them a few weeks to do it. Okay. And then I want to add a field to the form. Okay. So what I did here is I've identified what is keeping that form from being complete or ideal in supporting my business. Let's go back to the process view of this. Okay. All right, why are we back on the process page? Because it's to remind you all once again that each of the forms that we just went through supports a sub-process. But it's hard to tell how many of these are good to go and are fine for supporting the business going forward, and how many of them are not. So there is a feature coming up which will have a blue indicator that shows that the form is considered to be fine as is or complete. But until then, there's another very easy way, and that is to go to the scoping page, scope by process, and we'll remember that there are 12 forms, 12 screens that are needed to support the sub-processes under this order to cash process. And here we go. 9 are good to go. 3 of them require changes. So this is where now you can go back and have an objective, quantitative, and meaningful factual discussion instead of endless debates having to do with subjective information or anecdotes. And this really helps companies to make that decision of whether they keep their current system or to go to a new one, aka going through the system selection process. Now, if you were to go to the system selection process, the beauty is all of this, and I mean all of this, can be utilized, meaning you can take this kind of information, share it with the ERP companies that you want to have give you demos, and explain to them which processes, but where in the process, meaning which sub-process the gaps reside. If that information is shared with ERP companies and the system integrators, it gives them a massive head start in understanding your challenges and your needs. And by the way, it's another reason to adopt this order to cash, procure to pay, the enterprise architecture lingo, because that's something that any qualified system integrator speaks, and it really helps them to get a uniform start and connect with you on shared nomenclature to move forward. Okay, hopefully this helped. Please reach out with any questions. Contact information is in the comment box. Thank you for watching.